Hope everyone had a happy holiday season. New Year's on the horizon, and finally back to reality. I'm tired of all this bull crap. I'm ready to get back to some sort of semblance of normal life living. But we have a great slate of football coming up. We had a pretty awesome slate last weekend. It was a really fun kind of NFL stretch there from Christmas Day all the way through last Monday night's game. Even was a really good one as well. But we got four awesome college football playoff matchups on the horizon, one on New Year's Eve, three on New Year's Day. And then we have some big-time NFL matchups this weekend as well that'll finally decide and settle the NFL playoff field. I feel like we've been talking about this for forever since we started kind of doing this show together. I feel like in the NFL side, we've praised the Rams, I think, the entire time, and they're kind of falling apart here down the stretch. The AFC is completely open. I think you can make an argument for any team that makes the AFC playoffs that they could potentially win the Super Bowl, or at least represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. And I think when you look at the NFC too, maybe take one or two teams out. I think the Packers kind of with their health issues recently, and then probably the winner of the NFC South, probably leave those teams out. But every other team that's in there in the mix when they're playing at their best, I think we could all see them going to the Super Bowl. So it's going to be a really exciting NFL playoffs, and then hopefully this college football playoff lives up to the hype. But welcome back, boys. Took last week off with Christmas. Nick, we'll start with you. How was your hiatus and ready for some ball to come up?
Yeah, man, you touched on it all. We got a lot of ball to still be played, even though we're getting down to the wire here. Playoffs starting on both, NFL and college football. We got a lot of things that can still happen. There's still, a lot of implications that can be played in NFL in Week 18. You touched on it. AFC is just kind of wide open, and we have been very high on that Rams team. The NFC seems to be open too as well. So we touched on it a lot, talking NFL from the start of the season. It's a week-to-week league, and it just has, been proven that every single week up to this point. And now, heading into the season, we say, I can't wait for the games to start, and then you blink and it's almost over. We only have a couple more months of football left. So kind of just trying to soak it in and really enjoy the last couple months of football that we have. What do you think, Matt?
For sure. Really exciting times. I guess before we get into it, Nick, Ryan, were you guys in any fantasy championships this weekend? I unfortunately was very far from it, but you guys have any fun acting on that?
I was not. I was cooked from the start. I got nothing.
Yeah, I can proudly say I came in ninth in my 10-man league this year, so definitely not even close. But shout out all Bijan Robinson fantasy owners. He won a lot of championships last night, so shout out that guy. Puka did not do that, but shout out all the fantasy winners. That was a fun way to end it last night, and this week obviously had some good dramatics for you all out there. But yeah, man, you said it, Nick. Really exciting times. There were some fun games that went on and important games during our brief hiatus that we'll touch on as we're getting ready for the last week of the NFL regular season. Some really exciting playoff games in college, and then a playoff bracket shaking out in the NFL. So can't wait to continue getting into it, and shout out all our fantasy champs out there. Congrats.
All right, we'll start with the college football side of things. We'll go through the four matchups. And listen, we had a underwhelming, I guess you could say, kind of opening round, but I think we expected that with JMU and Tulane in there. The Miami and Texas A&M game wasn't nearly that very exciting game, but still came down to the wire. Texas A&M had a chance to tie it on the final drive. But outside of that, the first round kind of a little bit underwhelming there. Alabama-Oklahoma was a pretty exciting game with the Alabama comeback. Not the greatest football, but I think we actually are set up for four really good games. I'd be surprised if any of these games were mega blowouts. We have Ohio State as a 9.5-point favorite, Indiana as a 7, Georgia as a 6.5, and then Oregon as a 2.5. If the favorites covered and they won by 10, say Indiana, Georgia by 7, Ohio State by 10, I think those are all still going to be pretty good games. I'm going to be really shocked if any of these teams are winning by 3+ touchdowns or something. So I think we're set up for some really good football. And I think if you had to poll most people, they would probably say these are the 8 best teams in the country. You might get somebody from the outside saying Notre Dame should be one of these teams, but I think we're set up for some really fun ball coming up here over these next kind of few days. So we'll start it off with Wednesday night's game, number 10 Miami versus number 2 Ohio State. Miami coming off that battle against Texas A&M, that defensive kind of slugfest, not much offense there, but they find a way to get it done, and the defense makes them play when it matters most. So play number 2, Ohio State, coming off their first loss since the Michigan game last season, where they eventually used that as fuel to the fire and went on the run and won the national championship. Undefeated regular season this year, but lose to Indiana in the Big Ten title game. Are they out for blood again? 7:30 kick on ESPN down at the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State 7.5-point favorite, over under 41.5. We'll start off with you, Matt. Do you think that the Hurricanes have a chance to pull off the upset in this one?
Hurricanes definitely have a chance to pull off the upset in this one. Really interesting win kind of last week, like we were talking about there, last week in that first round matchup against Texas A&M in a slugfest. I think we've talked about a lot with all these playoff teams. It's so interesting just the way the college football schedule shakes out so often with sometimes a lack of adversity. It seems like these teams are facing when they just dominate and roll through their schedule here. So that's something I really look at when we talk about teams on a first round bye. Ohio State just came off their first loss, so they faced adversity, but they have gone a long time without facing off against a different color, a different opponent. Miami, fresh blood, just got a victory, sealed with 2 awesome plays by freshmen to win that game, the pick at the end, and then Malachi Tony with the only touchdown of the game there. So I think they definitely have a shot to continue rolling with momentum. Personally, I'm not going to pick them. I'm going to pick Ohio State. And then that line's an interesting one, especially coming off a 13-point game total that Miami was part of. And I think because of how good Ohio State's defense has been this season, I lean towards the under, but I think Ohio State's going to rebound. But given Miami's recent success, shown good strength and adversity in what was a wild game the entire way through, I think they're definitely going to make this a fun one. Like you said, Ryan, I don't anticipate any blowouts, and I think this is going to be a fun way to kick off the weekend for us.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think, in this, like Miami coming off that hard-fought 10-3 win at Kyle Field in College Station, where defense was kind of the main thing that stood out to me about them. But, offensively, it still was a struggle, other than Mark Fletcher when he had the ball in his hands, running for over 170 yards. But really, other than that, Beck didn't look all that great, and kind of the A&M defense really kept them in check. But, again, that Miami defense really showed up, forced 3 turnovers, 18 total quarterback pressures, 7 sacks, 3 coming from Ruben Bain, player that should be top 5, top 10 pick in this upcoming draft. But, defense showed that they can win, a game by themselves pretty much. And now with Ohio State, they're facing an offense that has put up 30 points in 8 games, averages 34 points scored per game, while also having one of the best defenses in the country, only allowing 8.2 points allowed, which is first in the nation, allow the least amount of total yards per game, allow the least amount of passing yards per game, and the 5th least amount of rushing yards per game. So, I think this is going to be another defensive slugfest. You look at Miami's defense, too. They're right up there with the best in the country, too. Only 13 points allowed per game, 4th best in the country. And they have 41 total sacks, 4th best in the country. So I think kind of with me is which offense can make the least amount of mistakes, which quarterback can limit the turnovers, force the errors in this one. Do you trust kind of the younger guy in Julian Sayin with the guys around him? Do you like the more experienced guy in Carson Beck? And, can, a running game take the weight off of either of these, quarterback shoulders? I think Ohio State with a balanced offense could be one of the more like an unstoppable team. And we didn't see that against Indiana. We didn't see that running game balance with Indiana, and that's why Indiana won that game. And, one thing that is changing for Ohio State is Ryan Day is now going to be the play caller, taking over for Brian Hartline, who took that USF job. So for me, overall, with all that being said, I think I still trust Ohio State in this one. I think they have the better roster, probably the best roster in college football when you look at it from top to bottom. And I've been, against Miami all year, in which they've proven me wrong so far. But even though I liked them to cover last week, I just don't think I saw too many encouraging signs from that game for me to think that they have what it takes to beat Ohio State. So I think I'm going to roll with Ohio State in this one. I do heavily lean to the under in this one, maybe like a 24-13 final score with the Buckeyes winning.
Yeah, the closer we get to this game and the hate that I've had for Miami all year, starting the preseason, I've talked myself more and more into Miami actually making this a ball game, with the biggest contingent being, does Carson Beck take care of the football? Because I think when you look at Miami and the way that they're built very similarly to Indiana. A really good defensive line. They have weapons on the offensive side. And Carson Beck, like for all the negative things we've said about him, when he's playing well, he's a really good quarterback. But it's just his inconsistencies and his turnovers. Like 10 interceptions still this year. That's too many. And if they go out there and they award Ohio State 1 or 2 extra opportunities, Ohio State's going to take advantage of those and win this game. But when you look at Miami's 2 losses this season, against Louisville, Carson Beck, 4 interceptions. Against SMU, 2 interceptions. So in their 2 losses this year, those were 6 of his 10 interceptions on the season. When he takes care of the football, they're a damn good team because up front on both lines of scrimmages, they're 2 of the better units in the league on the offensive and defensive line. You got Fletcher at running back, who, Nick, you touched on, over 150 rushing yards last week. Tony is a really electric playmaker with the ball in his hands as well. And the offense last week just did what they needed to do, and that was take care of the football and run the football, and they got it out of that game with a victory. If they can have this kind of similar blueprint, I really think they're going to have a shot in this one going into the fourth quarter, because you look at what Indiana did in that game, the defensive line wrecked Ohio State's offensive line, and Ruben Bain and the pass rushers on this team, they have the guys and the horses up front to do it. So I'm not going to be surprised if this is a ball game at all, but the biggest contingent is, does Carson Beck take care of the football? 6 interceptions in their 2 losses this year. If he has 1 or 2 picks in this game, I think it's over, and I think Ohio State could run away with it, win it by 2 touchdowns. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one and say he takes care of the football. They keep this one close. Ohio State still finds a way to win, but Miami keeps it within the number there. I do like the under there with you, Nick. I like this one as like a 23-14. I forget if that's what you said, but I like this one at like Miami plus 9.5 and the under 41.5. I think we see a very similar kind of score and game style as that Indiana-Ohio State game from a few weeks ago in the Big Ten title. So we go across the board with Ohio State moving on there. And we get the Thursday, the noon kickoff on New Year's Day, the Orange Bowl. This one will be played on ESPN as well. Number 5, Oregon versus number 4, Texas Tech. This is the one I'm looking forward to the most out of any of these 4 games. Oregon minus 2.5, over under 51.5. I'm expecting a track meet in this one. Nick, change my mind, or you agree with me as well that this one's going back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it. I think this is probably the game that I'm looking forward to the most. And, heading into the year, I was a little down on this Texas Tech team with having so many transfers and new faces. I think they brought in, the most new faces, new players in all of college football. But they've shown that they're legit. And, on the other side, Dante Moore coming in this game, he's, trying to show and prove why he should be one of the top quarterbacks off the board in this upcoming draft. And he gets an opportunity facing one of the best defenses in the country in Texas Tech. I can't say that. Only allowing, only just under 11 points per game, trailing Ohio State and Indiana in that category. So they allow the least amount of rushing yards per game, 68, and allow the 3rd fewest total yards per game with 254. So, you combine that with their offense, who we've seen put up huge numbers, averaging the 2nd most points per game with 42. Now, obviously, some of those games were against lesser teams, but the numbers don't lie. And then on the flip side, Oregon's right up there too, 39 points per game and only 16 points allowed per game. I think a big thing in this is, can Oregon's defense get to Bretton Moore and force him to make those tight throws, quick decisions? He's a different player when he sees the blitz and has guys in his face, but when he's protected, we've seen him make a ton of plays. So I think that's the reason why they're in the position they're in right now. I think, again, this is going to be a trench battle with some of the best linemen in the country on both sides of the ball for each team. I think this comes down to the trenches up front, the big guys up front. It's going to be a war, and Oregon is one of the best rushing teams in the nation. 1st in total rushing grade, 2nd in yards per carry, and then Texas Tech, one of the best run defenses in the country. 1st in run defense, 1st in yards per carry allowed. So I think we got a best on best matchup here in the trenches, and those are the best types of games to watch. But I think for me in this one, I said I like Texas Tech right when the bracket came out. I sprinkled on them to win it all. As much as I love Oregon and Dan Lanning, I think this defense is just unbelievable with David Bailey, Jacob Rodriguez. They have what it takes to bring them all away. So I think give me Texas Tech outright as dogs, 27-24. I think I lean the under just a bit in this one.
Yeah, I like that, Nick. You highlighted a lot of reasons that I think we've all agreed that this is going to be potentially the game of the weekend. And we've all mentioned it. Texas Tech was a almost it's hard to call them a sleeper. I mean, based on their position and rankings in the college football playoff, but it seems like with all the big dogs there, they're kind of a little bit left out of the pack. They're not first in the conversations, but they have a really great team. A quarterback with only 4 interceptions on the year, a linebacker that almost made it to New York for the Heisman conversation in Jacob Rodriguez. So that's a really exciting team just coming out on paper. And then obviously you have Dante Moore, a guy who he leaves for the NFL draft. We still don't know what he is going to do when it's all said and done. He could be right up there at the top in conversations with Fernando Mendoza, 2 teams like the Jets needy in that top 10. So really exciting, a lot of headlines there. I think I'm going to lean with you, Nick. We've talked about before how we like Texas Tech as a team that could kind of go, you sprinkled them to win the national championship, and I don't think that's a bad bet at all. I think I'm going to lean towards the upset. I think there is a reason that this line is 2.5. It's kind of hard to play the spread here. You kind of have to play a teaser if you like something like that. I think you really should just go money line if you're going to be picking in this game. But I think it's going to be a really exciting matchup. I really want to see how Jacob Rodriguez kind of leads this Texas Tech team into the playoffs and into a hostile environment and into some steep competition. Because we mentioned it, besides their 1 losses, the team was kind of steamrolled every other opponent they've played. BYU was one of the best teams they played this season, and they steamrolled them twice. So going against a very high-powered Oregon team, how is Jacob Rodriguez going to lead and orchestrate this defense? Could they get out to an early lead and then potentially build some momentum from there? I really want to see that. And then obviously, like you mentioned, Nick, can Oregon get to the quarterback if Morton's under some pressure? Will he be able to make the big plays we've seen all season? With only 4 interceptions on the year, if they can get a pick out of him, I think that can really sway the boat, rock the ship a little bit, and then have a massive impact on what happens in the rest of that game.
Yeah, the over of 51.5 in this matchup is my favorite play of these New Year's games. You look at Oregon, 7 of their 13 games this year, they've scored 40+. Texas Tech has scored 40+, 8 different times. Just 2 offenses that are really able to get going back and forth. And Texas Tech's got some players on that defensive side of the ball. That defense certainly has come to play this year. But this Oregon offense, I think, is probably the best offense they've seen all year. You look at Texas Tech, the best offenses that they played, probably BYU, and they've really shut them down both times. But how dynamic really was that BYU offense compared to kind of, the rest of these top dogs in the country. That Texas Tech defense was definitely the best unit in the Big 12 for sure. But I don't think they've seen an offense like this offense that Oregon brings to the table. All the speed that they can have horizontally and vertically. Sadiq at tight end, Dante Moore potentially the number 1 pick in the draft. If he goes out there and lights it up against this Texas Tech team, hell, he might elevate himself above Fernando Mendoza in draft circles. So this is a huge game for him as well. But I really think this is one that we just see these 2 teams kind of go back and forth. Very similar to like what we saw with the 49ers and Bears on Sunday Night Football just a couple of nights ago. I think we see these 2 teams go back and forth, like potential first 1 to 40 wins. And as much as I've liked this Texas Tech team throughout the year, it's hard for me to pick against Oregon in this spot too. It's just something, I don't know if I heard a good comparison earlier. Like if you scratch the logos off the helmets and you just put 2 football teams out there, hell, I would probably go with Texas Tech, but there's part of me still, I'm just trusting Oregon a little bit more. They were here in the playoff last year. Dan Lanning learned from that, had that experience. Their only loss this year was to the number 1 undefeated team in the country in Indiana. They're much more battle-tested. But Texas Tech, everyone in front of them this year, I was still caught off guard when going through their schedule before the Big 12 title game that they won every game this season by at least 20 points. Their 1 loss, they lost by 4 to Arizona State, but that's a stingy Arizona State team. Every other game this year, they've won, and they've won it by 20 or more points, and that's including in the conference championship game. Like, can you really discredit that too? So I really think this is the biggest coin flip. I'm just going to go with a little bit more history on my side and a little bit more reliability, I think, at the quarterback spot with Dante Moore, and I think the head coaching advantage with Dan Lanning. You add those things up, and I think this one, really fun game, really close game, comes down to the wire. But I'm going to go Oregon 35-31, so Oregon minus 2.5. But if you're making me make 1 pick on the game, it's at over 51.5. I think this is the funnest game of the weekend coming up. All right, we go to 4 o'clock now, the Rose Bowl. Hard to believe we're saying this. Number 9, Alabama versus number 1, Indiana. No, this is not a college basketball game. This is indeed a college football game. Indiana, a touchdown favorite, over under 47.5. Can Indiana continue this? I don't even know if it's a Cinderella run anymore, but just one of the cooler, I think, transformations in sports over the past decade. Hell, maybe even since it turned to 2000. What a turnaround, Matt. Do they keep it rolling and punch their way to the Final Four?
I'm going to say they do keep it rolling. They are going to punch their way to the Final Four. We've talked about the stories. You guys know I'm a guy who loves some stories. So I'm all about this Indiana storyline and seeing Curt Cignetti get it finally done. One thing I'm watching about, this is something I feel like I always bring up when we talk about Alabama, is can they rush the ball enough to earn a victory in this game? Last week, they had a great victory against Oklahoma, coming down from 17. But you look at the box score, when you include Ty Simpson having negative 22 rushing yards, they rushed for 28 yards as a team. And then if you want to take that away, Daniel Hill was their leading rusher, 9 carries, 43 yards, which is just nothing to write home about. They never have a strong rushing performance. And at a certain point, you got to punish a team. You can't pick a team who's not going to be dynamic on offense and confuse the defense in different ways. And then you're facing an Indiana team with an elite defense, one of the best defenses in the country. They're going to be ready for a one-dimensional passing attack against Alabama, which is crazy to say that Alabama can't run the football based on the tradition and the running backs we know who have come from that university. But if Alabama's not going to run the ball efficiently, I can't pick them to win the football game. I talked before about how I like Ty Simpson. Great win for him last week. Really showed some flashes, some poise, ability to come back in adversity on the road there against an Oklahoma team. I beat them earlier in the season, but they haven't shown me an ability to run the ball consistently this year. And because of that, I'm not going to pick them against what has been one of the better, if not best, defenses in the country.
Yeah, I mean, Rye, you touched on this is a funny one to look at and see Indiana as a touchdown favorite against Alabama, when Alabama historically one of the best college football programs ever, and Indiana who has been one of the worst collegiate football programs ever. And now roles are reversed here. Indiana has the number 1 overall seed in the country. And you also have Curt Cignetti, who was a former Alabama assistant, and you have Kalen DeBoer, who was a former Indiana offensive coordinator. So there's a lot of underlying connections in this game. Alabama coming off that 34-24 win against Oklahoma where, they were down 17-0 early. They got their revenge, on Oklahoma after they beat them in the regular season, battled back and only allowed 7 points in the second half. And Indiana coming into this one as a 1 seed, Big Ten champions, beating Ohio State. They have one of the better defenses in the country, second in the country in points allowed per game, in rushing yards allowed per game, and tackles for loss in the run game, while also putting up over 40 points per game on offense, 8th in the country in total yards per game with 473, and they have a Heisman winner under center. So, Matt, you touched on it. I think a big one in this is the Alabama run game. Can they, get going against this Indiana run defense? Alabama has struggled to get going on the ground, and if they can't have success in this one, it's going to be hard to beat Indiana. I think this is where Indiana has the biggest advantage, is being able to stop that rushing attack and try to force Ty Simpson to beat them. And, you kind of speed up Simpson and force him to make bad decision and cause turnovers. I think that's the best way, for Indiana to move on. And for Alabama, I think something with them also offensively is Ryan Williams hasn't really been a factor in, the last few weeks. So do they try to force him to rock a little bit more? Who knows? But either way, I think that offense needs to get going a little more. That being said, I think I'm going to roll with Indiana. I just trust them more. They've been the more consistent team all season. I don't think I'm going to go away from that now. I think give me a score like Indiana 28, Alabama 17. I guess slightly to the under too.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one simple. I'm just going to trust Indiana. I think that they've been the best team in the country this year from start to finish. Alabama, especially recently, has been up and down. The inconsistencies that they've shown in the DeBoer era so far is nothing like you saw from Nick Saban. Maybe once every 2 or 3 years, they would have a game where they would lay a dud. This Alabama team, you don't know what you're getting from them on a weekly basis. Even in that comeback last week or 2 weeks ago against Oklahoma, you can argue they were a couple Oklahoma self-inflicted wounds away from getting blown out in that game. That game had a couple crazy plays late in the first half that really swung the momentum to Alabama's way. But Oklahoma was on their way to a blowout in that one. And, that can say something about the resilience of this Alabama team, but they show up like that at the beginning of this game against Indiana. I think Indiana runs away with it. I don't think Indiana is fazed by the moment in this game. I think the way Kirk Cignetti's wired, I think the way Fernando Mendoza's wired, that kind of spreads throughout the team, and they all have that kind of energy and mindset. They don't care that they're playing the mighty Alabama Crimson Tide. I think they go out there, take care of business in this one, and prove why they've been undefeated the entire year and playing in arguably the best conference in the Big Ten, and show them that they're better than the SEC when it comes to college football right now. So give me the Hoosiers to win, and I'll take them to cover, and I think they win this one pretty comfortably. I don't think this one's ever really in doubt. All right, finish off college football. Number 6, Ole Miss versus number 3, Georgia. 8:00 kick on ESPN at the Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans. Georgia 6.5-point favorite, over under 55.5. I'll start us off with this one. This is my upset of the quarterfinal round. I'm taking Ole Miss to win this one outright. They went to Georgia earlier this season. I know Lane Kiffin was there. I know he was calling the plays in that one, but this was an Ole Miss team that took Georgia to the brinks, and Georgia is a team that has found ways to win week after week in the fourth quarter. They have that kind of resilient magic to them as well. They have that winning DNA about them, but you have to wonder if they show up and they start slow, does it come back to haunt them eventually? And this could be the game to do it. I think this Ole Miss team is playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think they're playing with something to prove, and despite the head coach leaving, all those players are still there, and they have that kind of, FU mentality. Let's go show Lane Kiffin that he should have never left us, and let's go win the national title. I said it a couple weeks ago. If there's one team on one of these lower seats to go make a run to win the whole thing, I think Ole Miss could do it because talent-wise they're there. They got the playmaker at quarterback in Chambliss, and they have the chip on their shoulder to go do it. So Georgia was my preseason pick to win it all. I'm going to take them losing in their first college football playoff game. And I think, too, when we look at and just have a kind of grand scheme of this whole thing. If you remember last year, none of the teams that had a bye actually won their next round matchup. So that's something to take into consideration. I think we had Ohio State, both of us, or all three of us. I think you guys both took Texas Tech. I took Oregon there. We all had Indiana, and I'm interested to hear if you guys like Georgia to win this one. But that's something I had in the back of my mind as well, that trend from last year. And do these teams on these long layoffs, on these long buys kind of come out slow? And Ole Miss had the chance to build some momentum going into this week. So toss it over to you, Nick, first. Am I crazy to think Ole Miss wins this one? I also like the over in this one. I think we see a lot of points.
No, you're not crazy at all for thinking that. And you did just touch on it, as, I'm going to talk about now, but I have all, the first round buys moving on, and I'm not confident in that at all with, how last year went. But, with this Ole Miss Georgia game, obviously a rematch of an insane game, from the regular season. Georgia won 43-35 at home. And both quarterbacks, used it. They did it all pretty much. Gunnar Stockton, 289 in the air, 4 passing touchdowns, 60 rushing yards, and a touchdown. And then Trinidad Chambliss, 260 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 42 on the ground, 2 rushing touchdowns. And, Ole Miss coming off blowout win against Tulane, 41-10 in their first game without Lane Kiffin. So, like you said, right, they're going to come in, with some momentum. But one thing that kind of sticks out to me when looking back at the first matchup is, can Ole Miss get that running game going? They only put up 88 total rushing yards, and Kawan Lacey had his worst game of the year. He was held just to 31 yards. I know you look at the box score, they ran for a total of 4 total touchdowns. So you look at it, looks like, it was a successful day on the ground. But I think they need a little more balance, maybe use Trinidad's legs a little more in this one. And as much as Chambliss has been a great player, he kind of struggled a bit. 46 passing grade, which was a season low, and a 52.8% completion percentage, also a season low against Georgia. So I think this is a time where they can look back. They had a little bit to time to see what they need to improve on, to get that revenge. And you look at the number, they still put up 35 points against that Georgia defense, while Trinidad didn't really have the good box score that you're thinking of. So I think, and they even had a late lead in that game, and they kind of just gave that away. But for me, I'm going to roll with Georgia. I think I just trust Georgia more with Kirby Smart. I trust the more experienced team here. I know, the story of Ole Miss coming in here is awesome, and I would love to see that. I would love to see Ole Miss go on a run here and at least make it to the national title just to shove it in Lane Kiffin's face. But I just trust Georgia more. I think we do get another shootout here. I think my favorite play of this weekend is the over here. I think give me like a score like 34-30 Georgia here in another high-scoring game.
Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely with both of y'all on taking the over there. I also, one of my favorite plays with this game is to take the Ole Miss on the spread there with a 6.5 point favorite, especially with Georgia being a 6.5 point favorite, especially with us expecting a lot of points. I think it's definitely likely that Ole Miss can cover, especially going back to your point, Ryan, definitely not crazy to pick them there. Nick, your last point is something that I was mulling over as you were talking. It's really interesting as we get into this new era of college sports as NIL is continuing to ramp and evolve at new speeds. I'm wondering how much stock I should continue to put in teams and their experience in the playoffs, right? Because I look at Georgia and I think of them as a playoff and an experienced team and a veteran team. And on the coaching side, that is 100% confident, 100% fair. And we know Kirby Smart is built for these moments. But with roster turnover from year to year and some players here, some players there, I don't know, like, how much can I even say that and feel confidently in that anymore? So that's something that I was thinking about as you were talking. I still feel that I have confidence in Georgia as a program, and they certainly have many players with big game experience. You get that as a Georgia Bulldog. But that's one thing I'm interested in. How much does that really hold true anymore with the way things are rapidly changing? So something that I'm interested to look forward in this matchup specifically this weekend with a program that has been so built up and so successful. And in terms of what I'm going to pick, Ryan, when you started talking about, Ole Miss potentially getting this done, the goosebumps in my arm, they started like prickling up a little bit. I was like, man, the story just gets me hyped up. Kind of like you were saying, Nick, like I want to believe it. I want it. And I think, and I'm not going to pick it, but you got me right there. You got me on the borderline. I almost flipped the script instantly just to fall in line, but I'm going to fall towards your side, Nick. I think I just trust Georgia more. I've tried to pick against Gunnar Stockton, I think, earlier in the season, just because he's maybe not the flashiest player in the world, but he is just an extremely consistent quarterback with that experience who has gotten it done time and time again. Hard to pick against him. I am interested to see how Kawan Lacey does in this rematch. I feel like the Georgia Bulldogs rushing defense isn't necessarily what it always has been, and so I think there is opportunity for Lacey to have a big game in this playoff environment, which can completely swing things, especially with Chambliss's ability on the ground as well. However, I am going to lean Georgia, but I really love taking Ole Miss to cover. I think that's my favorite pick in this game, just to slightly differ from your guys' with the over. I think it should be a close and fun game, and that gives you some fun room. If you're just looking to watch this game, have fun. If Ole Miss potentially having a chance to win, go for that cover opportunity. Look for a fun one, look for a lot of points, and just keep it close.
All right. Well, regardless of the outcome of these games, we should be set up for a fun Final Four. And now we run over to the NFL, where we have a few more playoff bids up for grabs. We'll start with the big three games we'll kind of touch on that are really going to make or break this NFL Week 18. We start on Saturday afternoon with the Panthers at 8-8. They travel to Tampa to play the 7-9 Bucks, who have been, I think we can all agree, one of the 5 worst teams over probably the past 4 to 5 weeks in the NFL. And here they are with the opportunity to win the division still. 4:30 kick on ABC. Bucks 2.5 point favorite, over under 44.5. The one caveat in this game: if the Panthers win, the Panthers are in. They're your NFC South champs. If the Bucks win, they need the Saints to beat the Falcons somehow due to crazy third, fourth, whatever tiebreakers down the line for the Bucks to win. So even if the Bucks win, it's been talked about that this was just a win and in game. The Bucks need to win, and they need the Falcons to lose on Sunday to make it. Doesn't make any sense at the end of the day because the Falcons have no chance to make it themselves. But the Panthers, they're simple. They're win, they're in. I'm going to take the Panthers. I just don't think in this scenario how you can take the Bucks. And the Panthers have been such like an every other week team. I feel like it's weird to just keep it as simple as that, but they show up one week and play well. They look like they did last week against the Seahawks. I think that over the past 6 to 7 weeks, you want to say, the Panthers have been playing better than the Bucks. The Panthers have really showed up too. I think when their back's been against the wall, like a couple of times where it looked like their season was headed south, whereas those games where like they beat the Panthers, they beat the Packers, and they had a couple kind of standout wins. So how bad the Bucks have been playing, I think they're just getting the respect for being the home team in this one. And I don't know what's happened to them, especially if they miss the playoffs. I think Todd Bowles has to go and get some new blood in there because that's one of the more talented teams in the NFL. They've been having some health issues the entire year. Baker hasn't really played well over the second half of the season too. But give me the Panthers to make it and be one of the cooler stories of the NFL this year. I think if they go to the playoffs and they win this division game, they're probably going to get rolled by one of those NFC West teams, either the Seahawks, I think, or the Rams would be their matchup. But I'm gonna roll with the Bucks plus the 2.5 there, and send roll with the Panthers and send the Bucks home, and the Panthers go to the playoffs. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think, first time in a long time that they're in the mix for this division, with playing a spiraling team like the Bucks. I love the Panthers here. I know we talked, you'll talk about their consistency, but I'm going to roll with the trend of them winning after a loss. They've done it the last, however many weeks. So I think give me Bryce Young and the Panthers to come out and win this division. And just really two teams that have had really, really weird years since week 7, against the Jets. They haven't been able to put back-to-back wins together, the Panthers. And then you look at the Bucks, a team that started out, I think it was 6-2 before their bye week, and now they're 1-7 and have a 4-game losing streak. And there's 4 losses are to the Saints, the Falcons, the Panthers, and Dolphins. And that one win since the bye week was a 3-point win at home against the Cardinals. So for a team that I was really high on, like the Bucks heading into the year, and a little lower on the Panthers, I'm completely flipping. Panthers just proving that they won't go away. Bucks have had to battle some injuries that really kind of derailed their season, but since then they haven't been able to bounce back. So, for this game to kind of determine the NFC South, I'm going to ride with the Panthers. Again, I know the consistency hasn't been all there like we talked about, but from what we're seeing out of Tampa Bay right now, it's hard to trust them. So I think give me Carolina outright here.
Yeah, I'll make it a clean sweep, and I'll keep it simple too. Definitely going with the Panthers and this one as well. Nick, I think we talked about this on the last episode when it was just the two of us. I feel like Bryce Young either comes out and he plays like Tom Brady or he plays like Blaine Gabbert. There's no in between with that guy. He is unreal, and it is one of my favorite things in football. And also, shout out Nick. I hope some of the viewers jumped in when there was that Bucks versus Panthers matchup, and there's that plus 300 Panthers to win the division odds if you got in ahead of that. And so if they go ahead and take care of business here, that is an absolutely stellar shout by Nick there. Hopefully getting a few extra dollars in the pockets of some of our viewers there. That could age super well. And what you guys said, I mean, since the bye, the Bucks have gone from a team with Emeka Egbuka looking like a clear rookie of the year favorite, Baker getting MVP conversations, to an absolute dumpster fire. I can't in my right mind pick them without just saying it's a crapshoot. Panthers, they're going to come back, bounce back, get it done, and then give someone a nice, easy first-round matchup. Hopefully they play the Rams in the first round of the playoffs since they beat the Rams earlier in the season. That would at least give us a fun storyline. So give me that matchup.
All right, so we got the Panthers going to the playoffs there. I don't think many people expected that going into the season. But maybe the game of the year potentially on paper here in the NFL to wrap up Saturday night. Your first real Saturday without wall-to-wall college football. You get Seahawks at 13-3 at the 49ers, 12-4, 8 o'clock kick on ABC. Seahawks 1.5 point favorite here on the road, over under 49.5. Winner of this game not only wins the NFC West, but also gets the 1 seed. And I think we've all seen it, all heard it. But the 49ers with their stadium hosting the Super Bowl this year, Santa Clara hosting the Super Bowl. The 49ers, they win this game. They have home field advantage until the Super Bowl. Obviously, it's technically a neutral game, but they won't have to get on a plane again and leave their hometown. So a lot on the line for this 49ers team at home in this one. And they're an underdog. It's a bit of a head-scratcher there for me. Are we falling into a trap? Or, Matt, what do you think? Do the Seahawks actually have a chance to go to the Niners and win this game and not only get that NFC West title, but the number 1 overall seed too?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one with them going to the 49ers place and Seattle being the favorite there. Like you said, it is a bit of a head scratcher. And I do want to do a quick, give my flowers to the 49ers. Like you guys said, we've been big Rams fans on this show, and we've talking Rams, Seahawks, and we're always throwing a quick nod to the 49ers because they're right there third in the division. But I feel like they've just slipped under the radar for whatever reason it was. We just, at least I personally, give them their flowers as a contender that they should have been getting, even though they were a half game back every single week. and they finally just continued. It's like a nagging little brother, just like kicking your ankle for 8 straight weeks, and then finally popping out. And then here we are talking about having the home field advantage throughout the postseason. So good for them. Mac Jones carried them through 8 weeks. Brock Purdy's back. Through all these injuries, I am shocked that they're still in this position. So that in itself has me excited. Who I'm going to pick in this game, I am going to pick the Seahawks. And I think, honestly, I'm more so doing this to not be a recency bias guy. I feel like it would be really easy for me to pick the Niners right now. I kind of want to after watching the way that Brock Purdy was playing with such absolute swagger against the Bears the other night. It was actually explosive, fun game. That reminds us of that Mahomes versus Goff Monday Night Football game of years past. But I feel like I've loved the Seahawks the entire season. Sam Darnold hasn't necessarily shown me that late season collapse that we saw last year. He had that game against the Rams in the season with, I believe, 4 interceptions. There is some cause for concern, but I'm still going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Jackson Smith-Njigba is playing at an offensive player of the year caliber. Their defense is absolutely phenomenal, and I've been a big fan of theirs all year, so I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt rolling into 49ers place and getting it done just because I've been a supporter. I don't want to let recency bias sway me. I think they're the better team as it stands right now. If we get deep in the playoffs and Fred Warner's walking out of the tunnel with his boys, I probably have a different answer for you guys. But as of right now, I'll try not to let recency bias sway me. I want to be true to my word, true to what I have been saying. But, I mean, there's going to be no shock, and I don't think it should shock anyone. The 49ers come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, these are 2 teams that heading into the year, I was pretty low, and they both look like, some of the best teams in the NFL right now. I didn't trust Sam Darnold heading into the year, and I thought all the injuries to the 49ers was going to be way too much for them, but obviously very wrong on both ends of that. But both teams coming into this game, 6-game winning streaks, so they're getting hot at the right time. And again, just as I said, like the main question with this 49ers team was the health of this squad. And they're showing, that next up mentality and proving that this is a deep team from top to bottom. And you touched on it, Matt, with Seattle. Can Sam Darnold, can you trust him in the bright lights? It was a little shaky the other week against the Rams, but he showed up when it mattered and led them to a win. And JSN has been, the best receiver in the league up to this point. He's going to have to keep being that reliable target for Darnold if they do want to win. 49ers coming off that shootout win, over the Bears where it did come down to that final play of the game. Brock Purdy throwing out for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing as well. CMC over 180 total yards and a touchdown. I think this one, I'm going to roll with the home team here. The 49ers have been going under the radar all year. Most of the year, I feel like we've only talked about the Rams and the Seahawks. And coming from someone who didn't trust or think the 49ers would be in the mix, I think, this right here is a perfect spot for them to take over the NFC West. Give me 49ers out right here and a slight lean to the over too. I like the over in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you, Nick. I like the 49ers at home in this one. When it comes down to it in a big game, these are still 2 quarterbacks necessarily that I don't have my full trust in. And if they go on, win an NFC championship, win a Super Bowl, and they do it with their arms, put the team on their back, sure, they'll have my respect. And Brock Purdy over the past 2 weeks has maybe been the best player in all of football. And Sam Darnold, back-to-back years now, has had awesome years. But they had everything kind of break their way, the Seahawks, in that Rams game at the end. He wasn't really playing well up to that point. Sure, he delivered down the stretch. But you look at that game, Matt, that you pointed out earlier in the season. You look last year in the Week 18 matchup, and then you look in the playoff matchup. Let me see Sam Darnold with everything on the line go out there and win this game. And until proven otherwise, I'll take the home team in that one. The one big trend kind of sticking out like a sore thumb in this one, Mike Macdonald, since taking over as head coach of the Seahawks, 14-2 on the road. They've been a very, very good road team in this one. And can the 49ers offense really produce the way that they have the past 2 weeks, again, against this really good Seahawks defense? That remains to be seen. But I'm going to ride with the home team in this one. I think the way that offense is clicking right now and kind of getting guys back each and every week, it seems like another guy is getting a little bit more involved in the offense. And I think Kyle Shanahan, too, like there's plenty of guys that could be in the discussion for Coach of the Year, from Vrabel, how McDonald could be in there. I think it's got to be Kyle Shanahan with all the injuries that team has had this year and to potentially get the number 1 seed in the NFC. And maybe be the best team in the NFL considered headed into the playoffs. Testament to him, and coming from a Kyle Shanahan hater, I think he's always been kind of overrated and falls flat in big spots. Give him his flowers because that's been a hell of a year. So I think they finish out a really strong year here, get that number 1 seed, get some rest, and hell, maybe even get Fred Warner back by the time the NFC Championship rolls around. So give me the 49ers to win this one outright at home as a dog. Are we falling into a trap? Potentially, but I'll take my chances there with that one. And to wrap it all up, NFL regular season, I forget what year this is, like 105 or something in the NFL. I don't think the NFL could have asked for a better rivalry to end the last regular season for them. I love this matchup no matter what. I think it's always one of the uglier games, but still, this is the best rivalry, I think, by far in the NFL, and maybe one of the 2 or 3 best rivalries in all of sports. These two programs hate each other. These two coaches have never liked each other, and for the stability of kind of both of these franchises that they've had over the past 20 years or so, since this rivalry's really been cooking, testament to both of them. But the Ravens at 8-8, at the Steelers 9-7, 8:20 kick on NBC, Sunday Night Football, wrap up the season. Ravens a 3.5-point favorite on the road, over under 41.5. Steelers already won the game at Baltimore earlier this year. Ravens being a 3.5-point favorite, I would have to assume that means Lamar Jackson's going to play in this one. Derrick Henry put the team on his back last week, kept their season alive. Ravens, Steelers for the AFC North title. Nick, who wins it and who goes to the playoffs?
Yeah. I mean, you touched on it in perfect AFC North fashion. The last game of the season, fighting for the 1 seed with Mike Tomlin yet again hovering around that 500 mark. I mean, 2 teams that just have been battling all year. Few injuries on both sides have kind of hurt them. But here we are talking about a playoff berth in one of the toughest divisions in football, Week 18. I think Baltimore's kind of been a tricky team to gauge this year with Lamar and all these injuries since Week 5, in and out of the lineup, not really playing consistently, not at 100% strength. But they got Derrick Henry going last week, over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. It looked like the old Derrick Henry that we're used to seeing. And Steelers have been right there with him too, beating the Lions in Detroit, but then last week losing to the Browns and not even scoring a touchdown too. I think this one being in Pittsburgh is a big, it definitely helps the Steelers a lot in this one. But for me, it comes down to if Lamar plays. I think the line showing 3.5 shows me that Lamar should be playing. So I think if Lamar plays, I really lean the Ravens in this way. I find it hard that he won't play in a must-win game to get into the playoffs. But, some reports have said that he's pretty banged up. So for me, I think it's if Lamar plays, I'm going to roll with Baltimore. If he doesn't, I'm going to go with the home team and the Steelers. But either way, I love the under in it. I think I saw 40.5. Like you said, 2 tough, gritty, physical teams that just hate each other. Even though it's a low number, still like that defense to show up in this one. And Rye, we touched on it early in the season. I think it was like late September that when the Ravens were kind of spiraling, the Steelers were still plus 475 to win this division. I think if you have that ticket right now, you're really, licking your chops right now watching this game in Week 18. So what do you think about this one, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should pick the final score like that one guy predicted for the Giants Raiders to be 4-2. I think that would be classic AFC North football there. Honestly, I think my one sentencer for this game, if we had to do it, is I have a hard time picking the Steelers with DK Metcalf out. And the evolution of that is if Calvin Austin does not play, the Steelers can't win because that offense was absolutely atrocious. And I know that the Baltimore Ravens don't have Myles Garrett, so you don't have to worry about him. And you don't have Denzel Ward out there clamping a 3rd-string receiver and like an 82-year-old Adam Thielen out there. So, I mean, that's not much of a challenge for a guy like Denzel Ward. So it is different strokes, but, I mean, they still have a talented defense. And, I mean, that Aaron Rodgers is old. They don't have a lot of weapons out there. If you don't have Calvin Austin, the guy who can at least make some noise with DK Metcalf suspended, it makes it really hard for me to pick you. And honestly, this is a little counterintuitive, and this is kind of a joke, but I mean, it is partially serious. The Steelers, I mean, the Ravens might be in a better position with Lamar hurt if that's what will make them run Derrick Henry. If Snoop Huntley being your starting quarterback is what it's going to take for you to give Derrick Henry the ball 30 times a game, that might be the best thing for you guys. So honestly, the play calling is all that matters from the Ravens. They've been killing themselves all year. Lamar hasn't played at his best. He's been hurt, but they just don't want to give their the ball to one of the best running backs in football, which I think has astounded me and most of the NFL all year long. I'm going to lean the Ravens, honestly, regardless of who's playing quarterback, because I've watched a decent amount of Steelers football this year, and I've been disappointed a decent amount of weekends just because of what I've seen with no DK. Hard to pick them. One thing I will say that's also interesting, not news to anybody, but the loser of this football game might have a new head coach next year. I think both of these coaches are under a lot of pressure. Both are potentially stale voices in a locker room. So we might see some big changes from some historic coaches based on their.
Yeah, two of the most stable franchises, kind of as I was touching on, and that always starts at the top there with the head coach. But I agree with you, Matt. Even if just say the Steelers or the Ravens, whoever wins this game and they both lose, or whoever wins this game loses the first round playoff matchup, I think you could see him on the way out too. It might just be time for a change and to switch some stuff up. And the Harbaugh-Lamar kind of relationship seems to maybe have soured a little bit. And I think at the end of the day, you're probably going to ride with the multiple-time MVP young quarterback over a head coach who hasn't even made it back to a Super Bowl since he won it 13 years ago. What is that now? I think they won it in 2012. So definitely could see some changes. I do think that DK Metcalf being out obviously is the big thing in this matchup. What do you make of that passing attack? Can we really point to it and be like, okay, there's another guy I can trust out there? Kenneth Gainwell is going to have to do work out of the backfield. Freiermuth, that tight end. They're really going to have to be able to run the ball, I think, with Jaylen Warren. And then back to what you were talking about, Matt, live and die with Derrick Henry. Give him the ball 35, 40 times in this one and just say, if that's how we're going to go out losing and they're able to shut Henry down to 100 rushing yards on 40 carries, then so be it. That's the way that we're going to go out. But I think you got to take the Steelers plus a 3.5 at least to cover. I'm going to take them to win at home in this one. I think the Ravens have just been too much of a inconsistent franchise this year, and just they're just such an unknown. And the Steelers haven't been that consistent either in their own regard, but they have shown when they're playing well, they can be a pretty solid team. So I'm going to take them at least with the points at home plus a 3.5. I'll tell Vegas maybe even to keep the points being at home, but it's rare to see these two teams split. I won't be surprised, a sweep. I won't be surprised at all to see the Ravens find a way to win this one. But I'm just going to go with the home team with the Steelers here. Definitely like the plus 3.5, but I'll take them to win and go to the AFC playoffs and cash that preseason ticket or that ticket from whenever that was, Nick, we were talking about early in the season, kind of bring up that receipt as well. But long episode here, lofty one, a lot of stuff on the line this week, both college and the NFL. Looking forward to watching starting tomorrow night on Wednesday all the way through Sunday. And we get that NFL playoff bracket in front of us. Life's going to be good over these next few weeks. So as always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Please please subscribe. Have a happy new year. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk next week.